Hello. Well, there's been a problem, specifically an audio problem on my side, which I did not know about. So what I've done is I have cranked the volume, specifically when I speak, during small conversational bits and whatnot. But where I actually ask questions and expand on certain subjects, I have actually re-recorded my voice and spliced it over. My guest's audio has not been compromised. So because the subject matter is really quite important, I think, and this is the reason why I have not scrapped the Indaba entirely. It would be such a pity if that was the case. Also you might see a few bits where like the sound might not line up with the few times the video actually shows my face. So I mean, you should be fine. I mean, you try to get the concepts in this Indaba. Hopefully you enjoy it. Cheerio.
Nikita Chashchinskii. Did I get that right?
Yeah, it is hard to pronounce. It is Chashchinskii. It has like letters that don't exist in English.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Chashchinskii, huh? Chashchinskii. There we go.
Yeah.
Whereabouts are you in the world? Or you don't?
Where am I?
You don't have to do OPSEC. Break any OPSEC if you don't.
Yeah, well, I'm in Armenia.
Okay.
The country in the South Caucasus.
Right. Enjoying it out there? Is it nice?
Yeah, it is pretty nice. It is actually pretty warm for what is it now, for October.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's over here in Hong Kong too. It's quite warm. We should be quite cold. But anyway, so you're the author of the couple of sidechains, the drive chains, the Zcash, as well as the Ethereum sidechain you've just recently released. And I came across your work. You published an article in the BIP300, which was quite interesting. And I thought you got the right mentality. I especially loved it when you started bringing in the analogy of modern Western military coming into Japan.
Yeah.
So let's see if I can get you on. So then I reached out to Paul Stock, and I said, could you please make an introduction for me? And he did so. So I'm grateful that you accepted. And so we can also like I like speaking to implementers because they tend to understand on a very nitty-gritty level, and they've thought about these problems from multiple different dimensions. And they're not just like a talking head. You see a lot of talking heads in the Bitcoin world.
Okay.
So what we can do is just jump straight into it and ask, what is drive chains? Even though there might be some people who don't know what it is.
Okay. Well, drive chain is a proposal to introduce basically two BIPs into Bitcoin, BIP300 and BIP301. And BIP300 enables two-way pegged sidechains, which basically means that you would have a main chain, which would be the Bitcoin full node, and you'd have a sidechain, which is a completely separate piece of software, but that shares the same monitor unit. So it is the same 21 million Bitcoins that you can send back and forth between this other piece of software, which most likely would be another kind of blockchain. Right? It would also have blocks, it would have transactions, it would have like outputs or accounts or something like that. And that is BIP300. That introduces this two-way peg mechanism that allows to transfer funds between a sidechain and the main chain at a one-to-one exchange rate. And BIP301, it introduces something called blend merged mining, which lets you skip implementing a consensus mechanism, a separate consensus mechanism on the sidechain, and to piggyback off of Bitcoin's consensus mechanism, which doesn't really piggyback because actually all of the transaction fees on the sidechain are paid to main chain miners. So yeah, and the cool thing about it is that with Drive Chain, in contrast to other proposals like ZK rollups and other stuff like that, main chain nodes and main chain miners barely have to do any work. So for blind merge mining, they just have to include a hash in the Coinbase, if I'm not mistaken, and like get paid for it. All the transaction fees on the sidechain, and for the two-way peg, for deposits. So moving from main chain to sidechain, they don't have to do really anything. And for withdrawals, miners have to like commit to a 32-byte hash, and then for 3 months vote on it. If it has enough votes, right, they vote with their hash power. So like one block means the vote can either stay the same, move up one, and move down one. And if this hash has enough votes, then the miners have to include a transaction, which is the pre-image of that hash. So this hash is basically a transaction ID of a transaction that pays out all of the outputs, not outputs, all the withdrawals from the sidechain. So that's basically Drive Chain, right? So the idea is to couple the sidechain to the main chain as loosely as possible. So that, and it is kind of asymmetric. So the sidechain has to run the main chain node to function, but the main chain doesn't have to care at all about sidechains. You can just run your main chain and barely be affected at all by all the sidechains. And like if people lose money on sidechains, if there are bugs in sidechains, you don't have to care. You just can use Bitcoin the way you used it before there was like BIP300, BIP301. So that's basically Drive Chain.
Okay, so sidechains introduces another layer or another level of functionality on top of Bitcoin. But why do we actually need that functionality? I'm keen to hear your opinion on this.
Well, well, I think having the ability to bring in new technology to your thing that you're trying to accomplish is a very valuable thing, right? And right now, bringing new technology to Bitcoin is very, very difficult, right? So the latest update, which is Taproot, it took, I think, 46 months from the first proposal to implementation, which is a pretty crazy time period for like technology in the technology world. So with Drive Chain, we can bring it down by down. And actually, there is sort of a good reason for the super long time frame, and that is because right now the only mechanism to introduce changes, there are only two mechanisms to introduce changes, and like one is soft forks, which is introducing changes, but they have to be backwards compatible. So old clients that didn't upgrade, they still need to kind of work with it. That's one thing. And another thing, they have to be activated by consensus of like everyone. So, and third thing, these soft forks, they affect every single Bitcoin user, right? They're not like side chains. You cannot ignore them, right? They affect you. That's soft forks. And there you kind of can get a soft fork. It would take like 46 months, like with Taproot. That's soft forks. And there are like hard forks, which is kind of a lot weirder because you basically create an altcoin and you copy all the UTXOs from Bitcoin. So, and that way you can kind of introduce arbitrary changes. And like the last hard fork of Bitcoin was during the block size wars with Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Satoshi version, this that kind of drama, right? So, and since then it is like enough, right? It is no one even talks about hard forks. And also people like barely talk about introducing soft forks. You can see that with, for example, the drama with the activation is an attempt to activate the check template verify opcode. So yeah, so any change you have to introduce, it has to go through a super long process. And with drive chain, you remove a lot of the reasons for that, because with drive chain, you do not affect every single Bitcoin user. You only affect people who deposit money into the sidechain. That's one thing. Another thing, it removes the restriction that your like soft fork has to be backwards compatible. A sidechain can be arbitrary software, can have like crazy new cryptography, like zero knowledge proofs or something that would be invented in the future. It doesn't matter, it can be anything. And also to activate a sidechain, you do not need like complete consensus of everyone. In order to activate a sidechain, basically miners vote on activating sidechains, which makes sense because they are the people who would have the best incentives to pick the best sidechains because they are the ones who would get all the transaction fees. So they have an incentive to like evaluate a sidechain and see, will this sidechain generate lots of transaction fees? If yes, then yeah, let's activate it. If not, then well, maybe not. So that's the idea.
Okay, so you have to engineer in layers, and then you make the layers as you know, as sort of loosely coupled as you can. And you have to do that because technology does change, things do evolve, the world does evolve and grow and move on, as is the case from the transition from copper to fiber optics, right? So this is if you have everything chunked into one design, it's going to become quite difficult to design for an evolving world. Now, in the case of Bitcoin, the base layer, main chain, that's the security layer, and that can handle I don't know how many transactions per second, 7 to 10 transactions or 7 transactions.
I think it is like 5 transactions per second. I looked it up for like the previous thing I wrote. It's like around 5.
Okay.
Around 5 per second.
Yeah. So then the argument is, well, you can't scale to the world.
Yeah.
But why would you want that level of security for, why would you want that level of security for the transaction of a coffee, right? So, I mean, as the world sort of moves to Bitcoin as a store of value, as it becomes an international reserve currency of the world, then what will happen is it'll be larger and larger chunks of data, of value that gets moved on this main chain. So then the argument is like, okay, well, can't we just do Lightning that directly, you lift up from base chain into a hash time locked contract, Lightning channel-based Lightning network? Do you have any arguments or opinions on this approach?
Well, it is a Lightning network is really cool, but the thing is, it is still limited by the by main chain in terms of onboarding people, right? Because opening every single Lightning channel requires like a Bitcoin transaction, and you're still limited to like 5 a second, right? And so if we want things to remain non-custodial and to have like people still like be their own banks, right? Then they'd have to open like a channel basically per person. And if if we need to onboard everyone in the world, which we would have to if we want the total victory scenario where Bitcoin becomes the reserve currency and like everything is denominated in Bitcoin, right? Everyone would have to use it. So we would have basically to onboard like 8 billion people, right? And with the current like throughput of the network, it would take like ridiculous amount of time. I think Paul calculated it at some point, and it came out like a century or something like that. I think there are some like mechanisms that could make it a bit better, like channel factors. I haven't looked into that much, but maybe it can be like somewhat less bad than like a century, but it's still kind of difficult. That's one problem. Another problem is the user experience, user interface problem, because Lightning and blockchains, all that is very complicated, right? And if we want Bitcoin to be like the money that everyone uses, then like grandma needs to be able to use it, right? So if in order to use your money, you need to understand complicated concepts like blockchain, like blocks, Bitcoin, Lightning network, what is a payment channel, what is a watchtower that like watches it, and also, right, the biggest problem with UX is that Lightning is an interactive protocol, so you have to have basically a node, not a node, like a piece of software that is connected to the internet that watches like your counterparty, so that you basically your money doesn't get stolen. I think they're called like watchtowers, right? So there are some ideas to make it better, which is basically to let people pay someone else to run a watchtower for them, which might work, but yeah, but it is not there yet. That's another thing. And the third thing is that Lightning Network still kind of, well, doesn't need, but there's like an opcode, I think any prev out, which if activated would make it a lot better, but it is a soft fork, so it would take like 4 to 6 months more or even more to activate probably, right? Because that's just how soft forks work right now. So yeah, so those are the 3 problems. So to summarize, it is the onboarding throughput limitation, the user experience, user interface, because you have to run your own watchtower, you have to understand, unless there's like some really nice UX that you kind of abstract all away, but I don't think it exists yet. And the third is there's still like an opcode that you need to activate to make it like really good and efficient. So, and it would take a really long time to do.
Now, Paul has an argument that drive chains can help ossify Bitcoin. What does ossify mean in this case? And how can drive chains help ossify Bitcoin? And why is ossification important?
All right, well, ossification basically means that you lock down the implementation and you don't implement any new features. You just introduce like security fixes, like only security improving, simple, understandable security improving changes. So for example, if for example, Bitcoin is completely ossified, then it would never implement this like Lightning Network op, any prev-out opcode, never, because it is a new feature. We don't need it because it introduces risk. But if there is, for example, a bug in the implementation of Bitcoin, then it would be implemented, right? And ossification is basically that idea, that you lock down the implementation, make it as simple as possible, and like never change it in ways that might even in the slightest compromise security. So, and drive chain can help ossify it because it would remove the need to ever soft fork Bitcoin again, because all new features, all new changes can be introduced as sidechains. And you can lock down the main chain, the base layer completely, and never introduce any new opcodes, any new soft forks, any new features. So, because right now, without any kind of distributed sidechain mechanism, we do not have a way to upgrade Bitcoin without affecting the main chain. So there is right now this conflict between these two things. One thing is, well, we need new features, right? We need this opcode to make Lightning work really well. But on the other hand, it is a base layer. It affects everyone. There's like huge risk in upgrading it. So, and because of this conflict, things take a very long time. Things are like super political, right? There's like a lot of drama and conflict about any change to Bitcoin. So, yeah.
Yeah, going back to the original mention of designing in layers. When you design networking protocols, you do it in layers. So eventually there's an application layer which uses the protocol. And that's where you get a plethora of different applications and different use cases and needs, etc. And then you can develop your application specifically for that use case, given the layer abstraction being presented to you. So in the case of Bitcoin, what I really like about drive chains is that there's a really, really loose coupling, and the changes that go into implementing drive changes are actually very simple. They're not hard to understand, and any competent developer can see that. Then people start saying, I mean, there are some people on the internet who say, oh, drive chains introduces what's known as a incentive perverse cancer or something like that. And well, yeah, do you have any opinions on this? I shall reserve judgment.
Okay, so drive chain introduces perverse incentives for like people in Bitcoin, which usually they talk about miners, right? When they talk about perverse incentives. So, well, in drive chain, there are like two parts. One part is blind merge mining, which the thing about blind merge mining is that you cannot really prevent people from doing merge mining. And it has been going on since like 4 years. And you cannot do anything about it. Anyone can like create a transaction that has like an op return with like a hash and that pays miners a certain amount of money. And that's blind that is merged money. And there's nothing you can do to prevent it unless you want to like censor transactions, which you don't want to do, right? So when you talk about perverse incentives for miners, you cannot be talking about blind merge mining because you can't do anything about it. It is already going on, right? So when people talk about perverse incentives, if we like still man this argument and try to make it as strong as possible, we would have to assume that they're talking about the two-way peg mechanism, right? So for deposits, they cannot be talking about deposits because deposits, again, you can right now do a one-way peg very easily. You just burn Bitcoins on the main chain and some other piece of software watches that Bitcoins were burned and deposits like Bitcoins on its network. So you don't really need anything new for deposits to work. So the only thing they can be criticizing is the withdrawal mechanism, which which introduces the possibility for miners to technically be able to steal those coins, right? Because if miners can coordinate with each other, that's like one thing. And 51% attack this withdrawal mechanism for a very long time, which is like 3 months. And I think it is like even more than 51% because of how voting works, but let's say 51% attack for 3 months, then they can basically include any transaction they want. So the strongest argument in terms of perverse incentives is that it gives miners an incentive to steal coins, like in some circumstances. So, okay. The thing is, there's also there's this incentive to steal coins. There's also the incentive to not steal them, because drive chain was designed basically to prevent this problem of miners stealing coins. Like the first line of defense is the long time it takes to to actually do that, right? So in order to steal coins, miners would have to create the withdrawal transactions that basically, so for example, let's say we have a main chain and a side chain, right? And on the side chain, there's like $1 million. And in order to steal, miners would have to create a transaction that withdrawal transaction that takes all the 10 million coins from the sidechain and pays it to themselves, right? And in order to do that, they'd have to hash this transaction, include that hash in the main chain, and then vote on it for 3 months, with everyone saying, like, for every block, that's the wrong hash.
Okay.
They're voting it, right?
Summarize what you just said there. So in order for a miner to steal, what they would need to do is they need to take the state of the sidechain, which is run by separate software. They need to aggregate and then put a hash on the whole state, the outgoings that come from the sidechain to the main chain. And then they need to append their own transaction information into that aggregate hash, which will then be different from the hash that the sidechain has submitted. Is that correct? So this means what will happen is that the voting process happens with all the miners to upvote, and you can see very clearly which of the miners is being a bad actor in this process. And you have 3 months to sort of like figure out who the bad actor is, and eventually the bad actor can choose to steal from the sidechain or not. Is this an accurate summary?
Yeah, sort of, but miners don't necessarily have to do anything in terms of like the sidechain. They can just create a transaction with one output, which just pays all the money to the miners, right?
Okay, so that's where I got it wrong. Okay, so the main chain miners won't put any information into the hash. So yeah, okay, so that means the actual transaction that is created is also part of the hash then, and then the hash of no return. Oh, I see. Fine. Okay, understood. Okay, so that's how you can very, very clearly see which of the miners are being a bad actor, and the community could kick up a fuss in retaliation.
Yeah, and I think the mechanisms that Paul proposed for dealing with that is like a user-activated soft fork that like prohibits the miners from like including that transaction, for example. Or like a nuclear option is like changing the mining algorithm and like breaking all of the ASICs of miners, which is kind of.
Yeah. So let's just. So what are you gonna do? Like some sort of surge, and then their ASICs are gonna fucking break, or what?
Well, not really. Right now, I think Bitcoin uses the hash double SHA-256 hash for its proof of work, which basically how proof of work works is that you have a hash function of a block. And in a block, there is a thing called a nonce, which is, I think, a 64-bit number. And miners, they just cycle through those nonce and they compute the double SHA-256 hash of this block. And they try to get a hash that has a particular number of zeros in front of it, something like that, right? So, and the likelihood that, and basically hashes are random. So the likelihood that you would get like one zero is like 50%, 2 zeros is 25%, and it halves every time. So you can like double the difficulty because you'd have to do double the number of computations. So, and the thing is, if you change this, and ASICs, as I understand it, are application-specific integrated circuits, which is basically means specialized hardware that computes these double SHA-256 hashes really, really fast. So if you change the proof of work algorithm from SHA-256, double SHA-256 to something else, then all the ASICs that are hyper-optimized for double SHA-256 will become useless, right? So, and if users have a way to hurt miners really badly, right? If they misbehave, right? That's like one thing. And the other thing, I think people like proposed it during the block size wars as a way to, to like fight it, I think, because like miners wanted to activate something. I think people came up with this idea of like users activated soft fork that changes the proof of work function during the block size wars to like to do something. I don't remember what. I think because like miners wanted to activate something or something like that. I'm not really that familiar with the whole like block size war lore. So yeah. And that's like the nuclear option, which is changing the. So basically, you see that all the miners, for example, start trying to include the wrong withdrawal transaction that pays all of the money to themselves. And then the nuclear option will be users activate the soft fork that makes all of their ASICs useless, right? So now, in the minds of miners, there's a calculation. Okay, so we could like steal this $1 million from the sidechain, but we run the risk of losing all of our ASICs and all of our future income. Maybe that's not such a good idea. Right? That's like the nuclear option. The other option, I think, Paul like mentioned it somewhere, that probably there is a way to activate a soft fork that prohibits this particular, including this particular transaction that miners are trying to withdraw. So it doesn't like nuke the miners completely, but it makes their attack kind of useless. They cannot, yeah, sort of, right? Basically, it turns their ability to steal coins into like a denial of service attack. So they can prevent people from withdrawing money from the sidechain, which is still not ideal, but not as bad as stealing, right? So that is the active stuff that users can do to prevent miners from stealing coins, right? Then there is just the logic of like the market. So one thing is that miners get all the transaction fees from the sidechain. So they basically have to run a calculation if they're rational profit maximizers, which basically Bitcoin's security model already depends on that assumption that miners are like reasonably rational profit maximizers. So they'd have to compare the revenue stream from all of the transactions fees from a sidechain forever, right, against the one-time payoff of stealing all the funds from the sidechain. And I think Paul did like in some blog post, he like broke it down with like math and like economics, how to work. With basically, you calculate something called the present value of all the fees going forward, which basically means that you have a certain interest rate, like 5% a year, right, which represents the time value of money. So, for example, getting $1 right now is more valuable than getting $1 in a year. So, and you represent that with an interest rate. So in a year, you would rather have, you would be indifferent between having 95 cents in a year and $1 today, right? And basically you add up all of the transactions fees projected into the future, multiply them by an interest rate every year, and you get like an infinite series, it converges, and you get a value that you can compare with the payout from stealing all the money, right? So that's one factor. If the present value of the fees is greater than the money you can steal in one time, then miners won't steal it if they're rational profit maximum. That's one thing. The other thing is the effect on the price of Bitcoin, on value of Bitcoin. Because if miners steal stuff from the sidechain, which is presumably valuable and adds value to Bitcoin, and that's one thing. It reduces the value of Bitcoin just because it becomes less useful because there is no this useful sidechain. That's one thing. The other thing, it sets a precedent for miners misbehaving and attacking the network. That's another factor, right? So these factors combine to decrease the value, the purchasing power, the price of Bitcoin. So you have these two effects. So you have the fees going forward forever, and you have the decrease in price. So you multiply that together, right? So basically get the present value at normal price compared to stolen value multiplied by the price that is reduced because of the attack. That's kind of like, when you steal like a piece of art from a museum, you can't like really sell it really easily. So you have to sell it for a lot less. And yeah, I think there was like this heist on like a Swedish like art museum where they like stole stuff. They couldn't sell it at all, and they wanted to sell it for like $100,000, which was, and the piece of art itself was worth like millions. So that's kind of the idea.
Okay, so I've got some questions from people on Twitter, and the first question is, can miners steal? Now, I'd like to drill into this first question by asking, is it okay for miners to steal? So, for example, maybe there's a scam chain, and the miners decide that, no, they don't want the scam chain to exist, so they nuke it out of existence. Or another example might be, well, if we liken it to the world that we have at the moment, venture capitalists might decide to fund a company, and maybe the company is not performing well. So what happens is the venture capitalists then pull the money from the company. This is in effect the ability to neutralize or nuke something. Now, also, I don't think it's a good idea to open up this concept of Bitcoin being a weapon at this very moment, but yeah, in essence, we'll talk about it a bit later. But in essence, Bitcoin is actually a weapon. It's basically a standing army, and yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about it a bit later. Yeah. So anyway, so what's your opinion on miners being able to steal or basically to kill a bad actor?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. That if a sidechain's value is negative, there is a way to destroy it, actually, which is very nice. For example, yeah, I think Paul also mentioned that in like some of his like video or article, right? Which is that smart contracts, as implemented, for example, on Ethereum, are you basically can include any smart contract, right? Even if it is adversarial or malicious, and they're kind of uncensorable. And you can't really do much about them, right? And with sidechains, the cool thing is, if somehow miners first activate this sidechain that is malicious, that actually turned out to be malicious, they can then just, for example, miners can say, well, users, you have until this date to withdraw all your money from the sidechain, or we'll just steal all your money, right? Something like that from this particular sidechain. And I think it would, like, that kind of action would probably require actually consensus for the miners not to get their ASICs bricked or not to get this transaction censored, right? They'd have to get consensus from all of the like Bitcoin community to like basically agree, yeah, okay, this sidechain is actually malicious. We are going to let you steal all their money, right? And I'm not sure, maybe that would be possible, but also miners must activate the sidechain in the first place, right? They have to vote on it in order to it to be activated in the first place. So there's kind of like these two lines of defense. One line is you just don't activate malicious sidechains. Another, if you ended up activating one anyway, you can steal all their money, right? And like end the scam or something like that.
I know there's going to be brainless people out there who's going to be like, they can have a knee-jerk reaction and immediately say, oh my God, miners can steal my Bitcoin. So let's throw the baby out with the bathwater and just forbid sidechains completely. Well, in those situations, just don't put your Bitcoin on a sidechain which you think is high risk. There are other people who have different risk tolerances to you. And if you don't want to put your Bitcoin on a sidechain that you think is too risky, or you want uber level of security, well then take your private key, stick it on a titanium plate and squirrel it away so that nobody else can see it, and you're protected by the hash power on the main chain. Yeah. So anyway, let's move on to the next question. Is why won't miners steal?
Yeah, so to recap, stealing is very, very hard with direction, because it is, like, to put it in an analogy, it is kind of leisurely strolling into a bank, pulling out the gun and say, give me all your money, right? They give you money, then you just leisurely stroll out of the bank and with this conspicuous bag of money and stroll down, then police come and apprehend you, right? So, and not with an analogy, it is, you have to first explicitly add this hash that is wrong. Basically, sidechain full nodes, they compute this hash exactly, and if it doesn't match, they basically would raise the alarm. So miners are stealing our money, right? Every single sidechain full node would raise this alarm, right? And then after you include this hash that steals all the money, you have to vote on it for 3 whole months. And not just vote on it, not just individual miner, you have to perform basically a sustained 51% attack for 3 months, right? Given that users can nuke your ASICs, one thing, and they can censor the transaction, the other thing. So there's risk to that. And that's just if you were hell-bent on stealing it, right? That's one reason. The other reason is just that it wouldn't necessarily be more profitable to steal than to just perform your duties and collect all of the sidechain fees forever, right? Because the present value of all the sidechain fees, given a high Bitcoin price, high Bitcoin usage utility, would probably be a lot higher than the amount of Bitcoin you can steal in one time and not get any income any further, and then at the lower price, right, that you'd have to liquidate to turn it into gold or dollars or something else, right? So yeah, basically those are the two kind of reasons, because it is difficult and because it is unprofitable.
Yeah, I think I can add a third one in that. As Bitcoin gets more and more integrated into society, those nation states that adopt it as legal tender, and it becomes a unit of account, the peacekeeping forces associated with those countries then get mobilized to actually protect Bitcoin. So if there's an entity that does a sustained attack on a Bitcoin sidechain, then those peacekeeping forces can point at black and white figures over a sustained attack over 3 months and say, look what you have been doing. Yeah.
On one hand, yes, but kind of the thing with Bitcoin is that you wanted actually to be very difficult to use the resources of the state to go after miners or full nodes, right? So in a good scenario where miners are not kind of located in one spot and have a legal company and so forth, but are distributed around the world in different jurisdictions and so forth, that would be probably more difficult to enforce legally.
Different jurisdictions, and that poses a whole bunch of different issues. The next question is, wouldn't miners sell the rights to make drive chains available to serial scammers to pre-mine shitcoins?
Okay, so one thing is that the whole point of sidechains is that you cannot pre-mine, right? There's no shitcoin. There's just one single monetary unit, and basically all sidechains must start with 0 Bitcoin deposited in them. And the only way to get Bitcoin in them is to burn Bitcoin on the main chain, not burn, but lock it up, right? Lock up Bitcoin on main chain and deposit it on the side chain. That's the only way to do it. Technically, you can use arbitrary software for a sidechain. So you could create like a sidechain that has some weird token that is separate from Bitcoin, that is used for something, right? But the thing is, it wouldn't have the same value as Bitcoin. It would be, for example, it would be like really weird, right? So you have in parallel the Bitcoin, which you can use, which has just a lot more value, and you have just this new token that popped out of nowhere. So if it is used as like a scam coin, it would be a lot more difficult to do just any scam coin with the sidechain. That's the first thing. The other thing is that miners, you'd have to give miners like a ridiculous amount of money to like bribe them, because if miners activate this thing that scams people on a sidechain, that would probably reduce the value of Bitcoin, and all of their like revenue is denominated in Bitcoin, right? That's like one thing. And also it probably wouldn't generate a lot of transaction fees in the long term. So it doesn't really like, yeah. So you'd have to bribe miners with an amount that would compensate them above and beyond the value they would lose from the price like going down because there are like scams on Bitcoin or something like that, right?
Okay, yeah, I think these questions are rather leading questions to sort of like highlight the nature of drive chains. Now, these next questions are more directed at you, and specifically implementation questions. Is why did you choose to implement Zcash instead of Monero or something called Grin?
Why Zcash? Well, okay. I cloned it because in spring 2020 there was a contest to clone it, and right, so Paul put out this contest that was specifically to clone Zcash. So I did that to win the contest. So that's pretty easy to answer.
I see. Yeah, that was the competition. Okay, so the next question is: are there any worries about a drive chain being OFAC'd? Similar to what happened with Tornado Cash, and if you could also explain what OFAC means.
OFAC, I think, is the sanction list that the United States Treasury or some like agency puts out that basically bans like Americans and anyone who wants to do business with Americans to interact with like some legal or other person, right? And with Tornado Cash, that was pretty interesting because they, I think they put addresses of a smart contract on this OFAC list, which is kind of weird legally, because is a smart contract a legal person or some other kind of person? That's a really weird question. I mean, it kind of is, because it has money, it can like send it to people, but it doesn't like register it anywhere. So it's pretty weird. So I think technically it is possible that people could the US like agency that does this could put Zcash sidechain, the Zcash sidechain on the OFAC list, but I think it will be more difficult than with Tornado Cash because Bitcoin uses the UTXO model and not the accounts model. So in Ethereum, you do not have kind of UTXOs that are expandable. You have accounts that are tied to. You have an account that is reusable, that is tied to a specific person or a specific contract. So if you sanction that specific address, then you cannot like use it. You cannot use the whole like smart contract. And with Bitcoin, that is not really the case. So you could, for example, sanction specific outputs. So like anyone who spends this output would be like a criminal, right? But
unless, of course, it's the state themselves, right?
yeah, sounds like that. But that's
Yeah, the state seems to sprinkle a little bit of pixie dust all over the stolen Bitcoin, and then all of a sudden it's all good again, isn't it? So
yeah, so that would be possible on the transparent chain. For example, on main chain, they can, for example, sanction a particular UTXO and say no one can spend it, right? But with Zcash, it is a bit weird because with Zcash you have the shielded addresses, which basically hide how much money an output has and who owns it, right? So I don't think you would be able to actually. So I think you would be able to spend this sanctioned output, put it in the Zcash sidechain on a shielded address, and then withdraw it to another output that would be clean. So that's kind of the thing that you could do if you want to be a criminal, like, but you can do that.
well, the thing about privacy is that you can have private conversations between you and your wife, and they then become candid. Now, you would not have the same level of candid conversation with your wife if you didn't have that privacy. Really, privacy is a human right.
Yeah, so actually, I think with the OFAC, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think the whole legal framework of OFAC would be enough to sanction the whole Zcash sidechain. You'd have to come up with something more, probably, like, because you'd have to sanction the whole sidechain, not just the addresses. Maybe you could sanction the deposit, the output that holds the coins for the sidechain, but that would be pretty weird also.
Yeah, because it's an aggregate of a number of transactions on the sidechain. Am I right?
And it is like even less clear that there is like a legal person there, because it is a lot more abstract even than like a smart contracts.
Okay, here's another question. Are there any plans to deprecate the T addresses on the Zcash sidechain?
Well, I don't know. I think, well, not really. Right now, actually, how the current Zcash sidechain works, the deposits, they show up as T addresses, which you could think would be a problem, but I'm not sure that it is, because on mainchain you have the address that they have to show up with and the amount anyway in the open. So if you deposited, for example, straight to shielded addresses, you would still have all of that information on the main chain. But maybe there is like an efficiency gain, because you wouldn't have to shield your T addresses after, like, you'd have to do one less action to shield them. That's like one argument in favor of that. And another is that users would basically get shielded money by default. Those are like the two arguments. But also there's like a difficulty with that, because the sidechain software has to verify, the sidechain full node software has to verify that the deposits actually showed up at their destinations, right? So, and I think it would be a lot kind of more difficult to implement with shielded addresses, because you'd have to somehow figure out a way to like verify, like with like their like crazy zero knowledge proof stuff, that this particular amount to this particular address actually showed up in the block, because otherwise you cannot validate that the deposits didn't just go like to the miners on the sidechain, or to nowhere, weren't just burned, right? So, and it is like a lot simpler to implement with T addresses, and you do not lose any privacy really if you shield them afterwards. And I think that can be solved with UI UX, like the Meltcast like proposal. So something like that.
Yeah, the Meltcast proposal is something Paul Stork came up with. Am I right? Yeah, actually, we spoke about it in a previous Indaba, but could you go into what problem the Meltcast implementation does?
Well, I actually haven't looked in super detailed way at it, but like I read the article about it some time ago. But basically, the way I understand it, the idea is to defeat the attack where you look at the metadata, at like the metadata. So, for example, when you shield a certain amount, the amount that you shield that is actually public is in the open, right? And it is a specific amount. And then if you unshield sometime later the exact same amount, well, it is not that difficult to connect those two open outputs, right?
Yeah, you can see it's the same document.
Yeah. So for example, if you deposit like 13.1111 Bitcoins into Zcash sidechain, and then you withdraw 13.1111 Bitcoins from Zcash sidechain, like for chain analysis, like software, that probably would be possible to figure out that you're the same person, right? So with Meltcast, as I understand it, the idea is that you break up this output, that 13.1111 output, into standard amounts, like like 1 Bitcoin, 2 Bitcoins, 4 Bitcoins, and so forth, right? It is basically like a binary number where you have.
Yeah, for example, with regard to the Tor network, what they do is they actually have constant packet size. So the last thing you want to do is have, like, for example, 12 byte packet go into the network and then goes out the network, and then what you do is you do an analysis on both the inputs and outputs of the network, and you say, oh well, okay, Nikita, you're the one who sent these 12 bytes in, and you are communicating with this host on the other side, because the probability, because we saw a 12 byte packet go out on the other side. So yeah, and actually I implemented this in one of the networking protocols I'm working on at the moment, and you know, just to reach the constant size packets, what I do is I just pad the packets with junk, you know, random numbers essentially, or just junk. Yeah.
That's kind of the difficult thing about like anonymity, because there's just so many different things that you can, like metadata that you can look up look at, that could de-anonymize you, right? And Meltcast also, I think, does it with time, right? So it schedules the deposits and withdrawals at particular times. So it also strips out the time information, because if you deposited at 1301 something and then withdraw at 1302, then again you can connect it. Right? So that's also a problem.
So it's a regular cadence,
yeah,
of data going in and out.
Yeah, and it also aggregates. I think, yeah, it aggregates everyone's stuff together, so you're kind of like mixed with all the other people on the like deposits path and withdrawal path.
Okay, so there's a regular cadence of data going in and out. Yeah. Okay. So the next question is probably more in jest. Is when mainnet? I think we can just sort of move on from that. The next question is, do you subscribe to the philosophy of code is law, as in the case with smart contracts and whatnot? I mean, if you look at Bitcoin also subscribes to that, in the sense that Bitcoin's code is law because it's implemented in C++. So essentially that's kind of like the Constitution, right? And it's constantly amending and growing. and refining and bug fixing, etc.
I think the code's law is not really like a principle that you can subscribe to. It is like, if it is implemented right, it is just an inescapable technological fact, right? That like you can't do anything about it. It is just your money moves to the place where code says it moves. So you can't do anything about it, right? So if it works, you don't need a principle. You just embed it in the technology, right? And if it is not embedded in the technology, then well, clearly code is not law because you can like override it.
Okay, so that wraps up this line of questioning. I'd like to open up a new chapter by sort of like every now and again I dip into the Bitcoin community, and every once in a while somebody comes up and who's got a very high signal to noise ratio, and specifically a fellow by the name of Jason Lowry. I think about 6 months ago, he's come into the Bitcoin community, and he's got a new sort of philosophy that he's talking about. He's actually Space Force. Yeah, and I thought, what the hell is this? What is this, like a Nixon Star Wars all over again? But anyway, there's good reasons for it. There's a lot of satellites up in space, and countries like China, I believe, if it's not just communist propaganda, are able to launch satellites which are able to intercept other satellites. So anyway, so this Trump endeavor has created a new space force which aims at protecting ground troops, the information source or information lines of ground troops on the ground. So this chap is actually well versed in military history, as one would expect. But anyway, so let me try to distill his thesis. And it starts by saying that all throughout human history, humans have used superior kinetic power to determine the legitimate chain of custody of things in our lives, like, whether it be houses, properties, etc. So let's sort of go back to single cells. It starts off with single cells. There's no, it's amoral. There's no emotions. There are no ideologies or anything. There are no brains. There is no pain. There is no nervous system. It's just all single cells. And what happens is that these single cells project kinetic force into the environment by consuming other single cells. And this is how they obtain their energy from the environment. Then over millions of years, what happened was that maybe a couple of these single cells evolved stickiness. Now, the stickiness caused a number of these single cells to sort of stick together, and as a result, they became multicellular. And note, this is not a negotiation. It's just these single cells were just operating. Now suddenly they're stuck together. And then naturally they started to develop an ability to cooperate with each other. So what this fellow is trying to do is he's trying to make a case for superior kinetic power. And when he means power, he literally means joules per second, in the scientific meaning of the word. And he used another example, like, for example, lions or a wolf pack, a pride of lions or a pack of wolves, in that the alpha male of the pride of lions is seen as the superior, the superior life form of that pride, and thus the pride is selecting it to further propagate the genes into the future. So this is why the cost is very high for the lion, in the sense that should a younger lion, more fitter, stronger, rise up through the ranks and take over the pride, then what happens is that the cubs of that pride is actually removed from the gene pool. This and as the pride, from the pride's perspective, this is a good thing, in the sense that the pride is more able to adapt more against very, very harsh conditions on the South African or the savannah. And a counterexample is that of the wolf. The wolf was domesticated, and now we have an array of different sorts of fluffy dogs, or bred in all sorts of different shapes and forms. And none of these dogs would survive a single day on the savannah. And the reason is that humans have reached the pinnacle of their kinetic power projection. So, humans started off with, fists and fire, knives, spears, bows and arrows, crossbows. Then we moved on to gunfire, cannons. We've reached the point of like nuclear bombs. And drone, proxy fighting via technology, and this superior command of, this intelligent application of kinetic power is what now determines the legitimate chain of custody of things.
So, this is where the Western people rock up to Japan. And blow people away with gunpowder and weapons and destroying samurai, and then they realize, oh shit, we need to evolve, we need to up our game. So then they change their society and become embrace society. That's why Japan is seen as part of the West. So we've reached a point now where our society has escalated the kinetic power projection to the point where we have nuclear bombs, and nuclear bombs is you cannot countervail a nuclear state. Why? Because if I launch a nuclear bomb at you, you're going to launch a nuclear bomb at me, and then we destroy each other. That goes against Darwinian evolution. That doesn't allow us to select who's the next, the legitimate chain of custody of things. You see what I mean? Because all the things and ourselves are destroyed. So it's a stalemate. It's the end of the line when it comes to kinetic power projection, joules per second. and we could say, oh well, okay, I'm going to launch drones at you, and you launch drones at me, and then the drones destroy each other, and you just got a pile of dead and destroyed drones on the ground, which is a useless use of things. So why not? The logic is, why not turn those drones into hashed miners? Put them on the ground and put it like a SHA-256 hashing algorithm, and have the drones still fight with each other, but in the electric domain. As you know, joules also are in the electric domain, which is also joules per second. So it's the same stuff. It's the same energy, joules per second, which is used to determine the legitimate chain of custody of things. Except that the cryptographic wall of security actually exceeds that of the U.S. military. And the U.S. industrial complex, which is a master of kinetic power projection. So this is one of the reasons why the USA is so, well off. It's because they have a very secure environment for them, and value gravitates to where it is secure. So this is and you can see this because like investors are going to say, well, where are the communists that are going to steal my shit? Like, okay, I'm going to put my value in places where the communists can't steal my shit. Where is that? It's now in the States. But now you can see that's a little bit different. What with the pink-haired people and the woke people, they're all going communist and doing strange stuff there. Anyway, so and also the main issue there is that you've got third-generation bankers. So the U.S. dollar started off as a means to to communicate to the world that this is a place where you can store your value, currency will be safe, and is backed up by the military-industrial complex. So there's not going to be any bombing of us. So you can put your value here. But as the inheritance, the family, the second generation and the third generation, they're all crack cocaine addicts and whatnot, living off granddaddy's money. So that the bankers are like third generation bankers now, and they're inflating the shit out of the US dollar and undermining. So maybe the military-industrial complex is doing their job to the degree that they are able to project kinetic power to secure their stuff. But that kinetic power is like nuclear bombs now. So it makes sense that just like the single-celled organisms now have to cooperate with other cells and they become multicellular, and it's not a negotiation. So what happens now is that all the countries that start mining or hashing, they have to start cooperating with other countries, and it's not a negotiation. And then as a result, what happens is that you create this massive, impenetrable cryptographic wall which secures the value of Bitcoin. And then over time, the value is just going to, the Bitcoin is just going to pull in the value of, things like art or property. So you won't buy property as a store of value. You'll just buy Bitcoin. Now, the thing is now, the question is now, this is why I like sidechains so much within this context, is that as the rewards for Bitcoin are reducing over time, the assumption is that fees would compensate the miners because the security budget's important. And as we know, if you don't pay your standing army, you're going to have a Genghis Khan coming up and knocking on your door, which is going to rape and pillage all your women and steal everything, you see, which is not something that you want. So you need to secure standing armies. And this is why I mentioned earlier on, the miners are the standing armies. The hash miners are the standing armies. So you really don't want to be in a position where you're compromising that hash power. And it's the same it's not kinetic, projecting kinetic joules per second, but it's projecting electric joules per second, which is the same energy. It's thermodynamic. In nature, it's connected to reality. It's not like this absolutely idiotic change that Ethereum has done by going into proof of stake and making everything virtual. It's actually connected to the real world. So, yeah. Okay, I think I went on a little rampage with it. Did you catch the drift? And why?
Yeah, I think
what I like about it is the security budget, because all the side chains are able to aggregate money, which then goes towards securing the miners, which means your shit is secure. You've got an electric power projection which is greater than that of the U.S. Military industrial complex, and laser focus. Where is the kinetic energy focused on? It's focused on the bad actors' wallets. You tried launching a 51% attack on the Bitcoin network. Man, your money is going to be drained very, very quickly. So it's like a laser, it's like an energy weapon. Bitcoin is like a fucking energy weapon, which will target an attacker's wallet. So and the fallout is not blood, it's not bombs, it's not destroyed buildings. It's like, will Ukraine and Russia and China just hash war with each other, please? Everyone will benefit. Okay,
okay.
What's your opinion on this?
Okay. So, so one idea is that basically miners having hash power can be a kind of replacement for military power, something like that.
Correct, yeah.
Well, okay. Yeah, so I don't think that's true, because I mean, you still can, if you have an actual like army with like bombers and like guys with rifles, you can still like show up and steal everyone's coins, right? You just instead of it is like kind of like the XKCD like comic, like have you seen it? Yeah, just oh, we are going. Oh no, they have invented a super like a cipher that we will need a computer that is larger, that is like a Dyson sphere around the sun to break. Oh no, we can't do anything. Then like it shows up like, oh no, just get the stranger and like beat him until he gives you the keys. So I mean, you can still do that, right? That's that hasn't changed. This hashing, right?
I think I can answer that. I think.
Okay.
Okay. So you know, human beings, we don't go to war over something small like a sandwich or a meal. We won't do that. So what we do is we create these abstract hierarchies of laws and whatnot, and that is actually enforced by the war that was fought in order to instill those things in place. And those things basically are used as a surrogate of using kinetic power projection to determine the chain of custody of things. So that's why you'll have the police force, which will say, okay, we're going to lock you up based on this mutually agreed hierarchical, abstract hierarchical concept of whatever the law is, you see. But all that shit goes out the window as soon as somebody like launches a, you know, Genghis Khan shows up at your doorstep, you know, all of those things just get obliterated because it's real joules per second. That is like, you know, if you get the bullet through the brain, you're done. There is no abstract hierarchy that's going to save you from that. But just, and the argument that was put forward was that just like elk, was it elk? No, moose. In North America, they have moose, which is big animals, right, with these great big antlers, and then they fight with each other to determine who is the greatest one, and they're going to you know, mate with all the women, all the females, right? So they get their genes get propagated into the future. So the point is that it's digital antlers. The miners become digital antlers for us, so that we can engage in war. Electric war, but bloodshed doesn't happen. Moose don't die, you know, humans don't die, infrastructure doesn't die. So now we get motivated to, instead of like going to do kinetic war, so what we do is we start to nurture our students to become better electrical engineers, better programmers, better, you know, whatnot, to make hashing better and to make the digital antlers better. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be kinetic power, because it will always be there. You will want to have a kinetic power projection unit, like a hash force or something, to secure your hashing infrastructure as well as communications networks. But as you and I know, like if you have a if you have like a titanium plate, okay, like this, I can encode my private key onto that, and then I can squirrel it away. And if everybody does self-custody, then it suddenly becomes a lot more difficult for an invading force to sweat hundreds of thousands of people for their private keys, you see. So a kinetic invasion, the cost of getting the Bitcoin from a kinetic invasion, kinetic power projection invasion, is really high, and you don't know whether you can actually get those the Bitcoin private keys.
Okay, but I think just getting money out of people is not like the only reason people like invade other people. So, for example, I might have like a weird ideological idea, and I want to impose it on everyone, and I just like invite everyone to impose my weird ideology on everyone. So, and I don't really care about money. I just want like everyone to be a whatever is, right?
Yeah, but that's an abstract hierarchy. Abstract hierarchy.
Yeah.
That would be like a religion, right? So
yeah, but if like the guys who are doing the crusades have like guns, then they can like force everyone else to be the whateverist also.
Well, that's the point I'm trying to make, is that yes, it doesn't matter if you propagating your abstract hierarchies. You know, whoever's who's able to project the kinetic joules per second is going to cut through those hierarchies, no matter what, those abstract hierarchies, no matter what. So, and we've reached the point now where in the Crusades they didn't have nuclear bombs. They could war on and say, oh yes, we've taken this and that's land and etc. But now we can't do that. We can't do that.
I mean, right, but
is nuclear, which is a mutually assured destruction.
Right, but not every single country has nuclear weapons, right? There's still non-nuclear countries can like fight each other. There's no consequence. Or a nuclear country can invade a non-nuclear country. There's no consequences, basically.
Well, yeah, but that's why we have got the big brother, the security cop of the world, the United States of America.
Oh, the nuclear umbrella, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's an abstract hierarchy of belief. Like join our little umbrella and use the US dollar and
I mean, yeah,
get safety.
I mean, yeah, that has worked kind of for like since the end of World War II, sort of mostly, which is nice, which is very nice. But okay, well, basically what I'm trying to say is that Bitcoin hashing wouldn't really do much against like bombs and like people with guns and stuff like that.
I agree.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is, I completely agree. But what I'm trying to say is that because it's difficult to steal that Bitcoin, if you bomb a Bitcoin, you don't get the Bitcoin.
Yeah, but with Bitcoin, it isn't necessarily the miners that make it difficult to steal. It's just it's like distributed nature, right? That you don't have a centralized like place, a centralized bank that is super easy to take over. Every single person has their own keys. It is not necessarily like a super huge army with like lots of guns. It's kind of like the Lawrence of Arabia thing, right? Like an insurgency, which is the problem is not that the enemy is so like powerful. It is like you don't know where he is, right? It's just how's it like you attack them and then you like turn to smoke and like evaporate in the sands of the desert, something like that, right? Because I think there was a really cool like lecture that I think his name was like Nagel, something like that. The guy that developed the anti-insurgency like doctrine with General Petraeus in Iraq, I think. So he gave a lecture about the counterinsurgency and how he like studied like Lawrence of Arabia in the 90s before there were like all these crazy insurgencies, right? And so he right. So and he was, I think, a tank battalion commander, if I'm not mistaken, in the Second Iraq War, when there was an insurgency, right? And as he put it, he was like responsible for some area, and he fought basically the like Al-Qaeda or some other kind of terrorist organization, like insurgency there. Basically, there was very, very small number of guys. It was less than the number of guys that he had under his command. And he had tanks, he had artillery, he had aircraft. So like as he put it, if the other side just like stood up and gave like a set piece battle, they'll just get deleted in like 3 seconds, right? But they don't stand up and give a good fight, right? They mix with the like civilian population, they like do terrorist attacks and stuff like that. So they do like insurgency, like partisan warfare. So I think kind of Bitcoin stuff is less like kind of I don't remember his name, but his like surname is Nagel. He's like tank battalion that like can just delete you in 3 seconds. That's like the state. The state is the battalion that can like delete you in 30 seconds if you just show up and turn yourself in. Bitcoin is more like the insurgency. That is just the thing is because it is like hidden and distributed everywhere. Like it is like very weak, like very weak individually in like a fair fight, but it is kind of unfair because there are like like thousands and thousands of like nodes all around the world, right? So if you want to destroy Bitcoin, like for example, if I don't know, like China wanted to destroy Bitcoin and use its military and whatever to destroy Bitcoin. That would be a very difficult task because like there are nodes, Bitcoin nodes in like United States. But are you going to invade United States to destroy Bitcoin? Not really, right? There are like nodes in Russia, in like all of these countries. Like vice versa, if United States wants to destroy Bitcoin, then again, there are like nodes in Russia and China. Are you going to start a nuclear war to destroy Bitcoin? Maybe not, right? But yeah. And also the thing is, it is like very difficult to find everyone. It's like hard. It is kind of
Well, that negates exactly the argument you said, in that you can drop bombs on a hashing farm.
yeah.
Difficult, you know, like it doesn't make sense for you to mobilize a kinetic power projection unit like an army or something to go out after the hash farms or Bitcoin infrastructure. It's far more better for you to just grow digital antlers yourself and start hashing yourself and mining, and then you're like, well, okay, I'm China, I'm gonna have my way with a Bitcoin network, and then you try to launch a 51% attack, and then you're like, oh my god, you know, then what happens is that other people like the United States of America or different countries, they're like, oh shit, China's launching an offensive on Bitcoin. They want to make the longest chain themselves so that they can have their way with the Bitcoin chain of custody or movement of value. So then what happens is that America can launch a response, a retaliation, and that would be not in the form, it could be in the form of kinetic or isolated strikes against a hashing infrastructure in China. But most likely it would be saying, okay, well, we need to mobilize our electrical engineers and our programmers and create a better solution and then make it even more powerful. So you ramp up with hashing. And this is where the digital antlers fight with each other. So you don't and you know, assume that Bitcoin at this point is the reserve currency of the world, right? So there's a strong motivation to have Bitcoin. And then you'll have it by legitimate means, and you're going to fight to protect it in legitimate means, as per the algorithm. So miners, miners, if Bitcoin supports drive chains, that means side chains can mobilize more Bitcoin for the miners to secure the infrastructure so that they can actually ramp up. In response to retaliation, they can retaliate to attacks like from countries like China or these other countries that might want to manipulate the chain in their way. So again, I don't think we will ever move away from the kinetic power projections. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Probably not.
No, not. But the thing is that the domain, the electrical power projections, suddenly becomes immune to nuclear bombs. It becomes immune to, not immune, like strongly immune towards nuclear bombs and strongly immune towards militaries and whatnot. Because now you have to sweat tens of thousands of people for their Bitcoin, private keys, if you want to get the Bitcoin. Assuming that Bitcoin is the reserve currency of the world. So I think there might be hope. And then instead of like a mutually assured destruction of the kinetic power projection, you become a mutually assured preservation using electric power projection. I don't know. Anyway, I'm still muddling through these ideas and how the side chains actually play into that and actually can support how to create an even more powerful or stronger like a digital encrypted wall to secure people's Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with this sort of hash power securing things, there's sort of two components that we need to get right to make sure that this is effective. One is to have a very high security budget, so that, for example, if China decides, well, we don't want Bitcoin to exist, they cannot just pay whatever, like a couple $1 million a day to like destroy it, right? And then like censor it to exist deleted by just denial of service attacking it, is just spending more money, because I mean they can print money, they can tax people, and I mean, yeah, that's kind of one problem. One angle of attack is just to pay the security budget over and over again to denial of service attack the Bitcoin network. And the other one is to make sure that miners have good like OPSEC, so that, for example, if miners had, if all of the mining was done by like 100 data centers around the world, then, for example, then then like for example, China, United States, Russia, and like the EU can like lie together and say, well, we have our differences, but having the ability to print money is very nice. So we'd like to destroy Bitcoin. And then, for example, like China and Russia like take over or whatever, ballistic missiles strike all the data centers in the Central Asia, in Russia, in China. United States just takes over all the data centers in the United States and like bombs or drone strikes all the data centers in the like South Africa, in countries that don't want to like give them up voluntarily, and Bitcoin is deleted, right? You kind of need to have the fog in the desert kind of thing to survive that kind of attack.
Yeah, no, I don't think at any point I'm suggesting that we can do away with kinetic power projection. I'm saying we do need to have it, but the point is that we don't need to have the big brother of the United States with their massive military industrial complex to be a big brother. Maybe you do. I mean, maybe you do. But the thing is that's really there to secure the US dollar, right? Ultimately. So
I think there's a bit more than that, because there's just like more to the world than just like the finance, right? So one thing is, for example, preventing all of the European, like crazy European wars, right? So since World War II, kind of the NATO was formed, the United States became the like superpower, and there are no more wars, like big, super crazy wars in Europe. Well, until recently, of course, right? And the same thing like in Asia, right? Since kind of the Japan, like South Korea, like joined, and since there were the like Korean War, the Vietnam War, but they were not as like crazy as anything as crazy as like World War I or World War II. So there's like a huge just preventing wars thing that benefit. It is just more than the financial benefit, right? And beyond the US dollars, there's also the international trade, right? That is enabled by basically the US Navy like securing all the oceans and preventing countries from like imposing their own like trade, pirates or just states imposing their own like ideas about trade. So there's just more than the dollar probably to the United States hegemony and stuff like that.
23336. Yeah, sure, I hear you, but when you are doing an international trade, you can't resort to barter. You need to have something like the US dollar to peg all trading and financial, as well as commercial activity, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you can imagine still, for example, in the world where Bitcoin is the money, the reserve currency, and the United States is still like patrolling the oceans and enabling trade anyway.
Oh yeah, well, I don't know what that world would look like. I mean, how would you fund that?
Well, with taxes, right?
No, I think there's a lot more printing money to do with that sort of thing. No, I think by that stage, America has to be the major hasher to be able to afford such a thing. I suppose what is needed is the United States government or the military industrial complex to sort of like sit up and understand, oh shit, we need to it's a military and it's a national security interest that we become experts at Bitcoin mining, because if we do not, we will not be able to sustain our current levels of funding of the military industrial complex, because the people are starting to now to use Bitcoin, which is not inflatable. Thus, we cannot sustain ourselves via inflation. So we have to become miners, and bloody good miners, to be able to sustain not only superior kinetic but also electric force projection.
I mean, yeah, but the thing is with hashing and with mining is that it is. I don't think hashing and mining is the best way to get Bitcoin, because it is an ultra cutthroat competitive industry where like margins are ultra thin. So
that's why lions, they could destroy
I mean, yeah, but if you're the state, it is still a lot easier to tell people, hey, good citizens, you need to pay your taxes or else you're going to go to jail. So pay your taxes, please.
But this is good. This is good because now it becomes to the point where those politicians can't just print the money, you see?
Yeah.
So they have to,
that's
a day's job. They actually have to get off their fucking asses and get the job done.
I mean, yeah, it would be a lot more kind of straightforward and kind of honest system, because you cannot just, for example, because right now with governments can do like three things to get money. One thing is just straightforwardly tax people. The other thing is to get debt. And the other thing is to use the central bank, right, to print money. And they kind of balance each other. You can take a huge debt on because, well, you can just devalue the currency and to reduce the real value of your debt. So it isn't as scary, right? But if you have a currency that you cannot just inflate at will, like Bitcoin or like the gold standard, something like that, then it removes the central bank thing, and you have only debt and taxes. So, getting taxes is more politically difficult, right? You have to like argue about it in Congress, right? And like fights like the Republicans, the Democrats, all of that stuff, right? And debt is like real debt. You cannot devalue it. If it is like, if it is $1 billion, it will be still $1 billion in 10 years. You still owe $1 billion in 10 years, and not like 700 billion, because the currency deflated by 30%. Right?
Yeah. So you can actually. So this is how the rich get richer in this Cantillon sort of system. Because, you buy property and then you're like, yes, inflated. My assets go up in value. Thank you very much. So okay,
yeah.
I want to ask you your opinion on proof of stake. Oh wait, have we concluded this whole chapter? Do you have any more sort of?
Have we concluded?
Kinetic, projection, electric power,
I think
security, etc.
I think yes, probably yes. We have concluded
on proof of stake, and yeah.
Okay, proof of stake. I haven't studied it very closely, so I don't really understand very well how exactly it is supposed to work. But in the understanding that I have, which is kind of limited, is that you, instead of doing proof of work, you are staking coins, right? Putting them at risk. And then you get some payment for them and then you like get a right to construct a block randomly. Right? It is kind of like buying a lottery ticket to construct a block. And if you win that lottery, you can construct this block and pay yourself a reward, right? So, it seems to be kind of working for Ethereum right now, so it probably can kind of work. So, okay. The problem is, as I understand it, the strongest argument, which again Paul wrote about in like his article, which is like something like nothing is cheaper than proof of work, is that the thing is, with proof of stake, you would still waste the exact same amount of resources as for proof of work at the same security budget, because people would like do things. to any marginal thing that you can do to make get the slice of the security budget, you would do, right? And people would compete with each other until it is like equal, and the margins are rather thin, right? As with mining. So I think it is not really any better than proof of work. That's kind of the problem. And the cost that it has, like beyond not being particularly better because it wastes as much resources as proof of work, is that it is more complicated, right? It's a lot less straightforward than like counting zeros in front of a hash. You need this whole like construction of like staking and like getting the rights to get like a block. So I think you might make the kind of environmentalist argument for it, sort of, because you could say that instead of wasting electricity, you would be wasting some other thing, which you presumably will be like less bad. But I'm not sure that it is like less bad, because I think one argument against proof of stake was that people would just like rewrite history for the blockchain many times, and they would like waste as much electricity. I'm not sure if current proof of stake algorithms are vulnerable to that, but that's like one way that like the waste can be equivalent. Another way is people just locking up capital, right? So that cannot be deployed elsewhere. So instead of investing, for example, in founding like a new company as a VC, or just investing in some existing corporation that like actually produces stuff, you would stake money in the like to get stuff, right? Which it isn't really clear which is worse. Is energy cost worse, or the cost that you get from proof of stake? So yeah. Well, I guess if you really care about the kind of the environmentalist idea, then you would say that clearly wasting energy is worse. But yeah, but that's the argument that would be compelling only to people that kind of have this idea that we have to restrict our energy usage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. I hear a number of, which I can come back to you on that. Firstly, I like your point on in a proof of stake system, you're just going to allocate the capital towards like a security mechanism, or a way for you to get a higher security reward, a security budget, which pulls money out of innovative cycles, which would promote further human solutions to human problems. So as a result, you look inward, and you just care about going inward. That's an interesting perspective. I've not really thought about it from that perspective. Though, with light of this connected electric power projection, right now, Ethereum is suffering from censorship. More and more blocks are actually being censored, and this is because you've got like a majority of stakeholders, which you are unable to identify, are starting to censor blocks. So I think there's now more than 51% of the blocks are actually being censored. So this means that's okay. It's like the system's falling apart, right? It's like, okay, I can't make my transaction because the majority of whatever those powers might be, they don't like me. So now I can't make my transactions. So, but in a proof of work scenario, in the Bitcoin scenario, like this, I actually have a means to fight back. Do you see what I mean? Like if I'm a state and let's say I'm a minor state, maybe Australia or something like that, and China wants me to say, oh no, certain things about Taiwan, and they say, okay, if you don't say this, then we'll censor you. We will turn our miners such that your transactions from Australia are not recognized and accepted. What Australia can do is they can summon readily available joules of energy and they're everywhere, right? Sunlight, wind, tidal power, geothermal, it's all there. And they can summon these joules of energy to countervail or neutralize the threat of having their transactions censored by like a state like China, you see. So what's great about proof of work is that everybody has access to joules of energy. And the environmentalists, largely, they don't understand it. There's a whole ESG, no, hear me out. It's the whole ESG thing. Joules of energy are freely available. They're everywhere, man. They're everywhere. What the issue is if there's any, I forgot the word. You know when you burn something, you have a vehicle you're driving and it has output. What is the output called?
The exhaust. Exhaust, yes.
The word for it. It has exhaust, right? It is actually chucking crap into the environment, like, you know.
You mean like pollution, something like that?
Yes, it's generating pollution, right?
Yeah.
But hash miners are not. The input is in the form of electricity, and the output is just electricity. It's hash. So it's the cleanest of all industry by far. And it's so efficient. It's just so efficient. It's like you can't get in my opinion. Like you are basically doing what the military industrial complex is doing by projecting joules of energy to protect a digital asset, which previously was...
Oh, okay. Okay, I think I'm starting to understand what you mean by sort of the military industrial complex projection joules of energy. So in order to secure the existing financial system, we need the whole like legal,
yes,
the police force, all of that, right? And that is the cost of it, right? And with Bitcoin, we need like less of it because it is secured by cryptography, by like miners and stuff like that. So you kind of do have to compare the cost of mining in terms of like wasted energy, and the cost of securing the financial system with all of the police, all of the like legal stuff and so forth, right? Well, I agree with that. That makes sense.
Yeah. I would love it if you could write a well-written Nikita blog post on this in relation to drive chains. That would be good. Because I like your writing. You write.
Thanks.
So in proof of
on what again? On my relation to drive chain?
The point that you just understood about the...
Oh, okay.
And then how, you know, drive chains can increase the security budget, etc. But with relation to, like, you know, the US military industrial complex, you know, like, but I think you also need to do some research. You can check out Jason Lowry's stuff. You know, he's got some interesting insights. Anyway, so I think that proof of stake becomes harder and harder over time to displace a bad actor. For example, let's say one particular actor, he starts to aggregate more and more stake within the system, which means that it's harder and harder for you to countervail him because you need a certain amount of ether to countervail him. What does countervail mean? It means to neutralize your opponent at the same level, man. So like if you have 51% of the stake in the system, I can't get 51% of the stake unless I sort of tap into some sort of like inflation stuff. And only then I can countervail you. So really you need to sort of inflate the proof of stakes monetary supply in order to countervail, or you fork bad actors out. But then you've got a bloody sort of like a, you know, political mess every single time this sort of thing happens. But in proof of work, you don't have that. What you can do is summon the ingenuity, the intelligence of the people to mobilize readily available joules of energy, which are everywhere, to drive up your hashing power to countervail your opponent who is seeking to censor you. And now
I think
your universities which are churning out students who are taking this very seriously because they're being nationalistic, like, yes, we need to make sure that our people are being accepted into the first class citizens of the world. You know, we're going to make sure that our mining is of the top grade so that, certain countries can't censor us. And we can do first-class trading with everybody in the world using Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that looks like a pretty good criticism of the proof of stake, which probably is true. I don't know exactly how proof of stake works, if there is some sort of way to address that, but if there isn't, then that's pretty bad, because then the barrier to entry to proof of stake is a lot higher than in mining, right? Because in mining, you can, anywhere in the world where you have electricity, like a computer and some ASICs, you can spin up a miner, right?
In Africa, good luck. Have at it, buddy. Secure your country and your own self-sovereignty, and you're being treated like a first-class citizen. But the good thing about this is that, just like single cells who were independent and they just suddenly stuck to each other, they evolved to stick to each other. Bitcoin is forcing the countries of the world, whether they like it or not. It's not a negotiation. They're forced to stick together. So that means if I'm in the island of Solomon, which has got, and I start mining, I'm contributing to the same wall of energy that all the countries in the world are contributing towards, you see? So let's say...
Yeah, it is. It is sort of well, at least in the financial domain, yes, it would be like Bitcoin would be kind of a supranational thing that you can't do anything about. No individual country can do anything about. It is kind of... Okay.
It's not
a
negotiation, brother.
That's
do it or not.
Yeah.
Why? And because it's actual joules projected per second. Remember what we said, that you can have a political system with all the laws and whatnot. You can stack your abstract hierarchies as high as you want them to be. But as soon as Genghis Khan shows up on your doorstep with kinetic power, all of that shit gets destroyed. So in this situation, it's the joules per second. I lost my point. But the joules per second from the Bitcoin mining is going to cut through every single abstract hierarchical thing that you might create. Because remember, we create abstract hierarchies so that we can mobilize fiat money. But now, the money that we start to use is directly the exact source of energy of power projection. So this means our abstract hierarchies, our human systems, our legal systems will be, I don't know, will they be distilled? Will they be simplified? Will they, because ultimately the money is connected to thermodynamics. You see what I mean? It's connected to real human ingenuity. So what I'm trying to say is that this Bitcoin is going to cut through fiat currency. Like you don't have a choice. It's not a negotiation. All fiat currencies in the world are just going to be cut through. It's just destroyed. So I'm at the point.
Okay.
I'm at the point now. Is if a country doesn't recognize this, they're a banana republic. You know what I mean?
Maybe. Yeah.
No, it's a little bit. I know I'm being a little bit, effervescent. I'm bubbling a bit, but this is the next form of power projection. And if the states or other countries don't get this, then it's you're a banana republic, buddy. And the only country that's getting it so far is El Salvador, right? And you can be damn sure that they're going to be mobilizing kinetic power projection. Like the military, to secure their mining infrastructure, to secure their communications infrastructure, because they're now fighting a war on a different level.
Yeah, well, actually, I think with Bitcoin, it isn't necessarily Bitcoin bidding is not necessarily as inevitable as people believe, because there's this sort of strain of thought in the Bitcoin community, which is well, everything is already perfect. We have the best money in the world, and then at some point there will be some like financial crisis in Europe that would like spread to all over the world, and then all of the financial systems of the world will implode. And there will be hyper Bitcoinization, and we all are going to be trillionaires, and everything is going to be amazing, right? It's kind of like well, like everything would be like kind of given to us because we kind of got lucky and we got like this on this like Bitcoin thing early, right? So the thing is, I think something as serious and like as crazy as like dislodging the incumbent financial system and replacing the whole financial system of the world, kind of moving aside like great powers and stuff like that. It takes kind of more than that, more than just like, oh, well, we're just going to be given this, right? It's not something that you're given, it's something that you like take. It's like work.
I am saying that we are the Mongolian horde.
Yeah, sort of.
We're the Mongolian horde. We're the ones that are rocking up to this city with the walls with a new cannon. You know, we're the ones that are going into like Edo period Japan with like guns at the moment. I'm saying we've got superior firepower.
Well, actually, I don't think necessarily with like Bitcoin in its current state, because, for example, let's say the financial system of the world implodes tomorrow.
Great.
Is Bitcoin?
We've got a system.
Right, but is Bitcoin ready to like accommodate all of the financial activity of the world? No, right?
No, but there's going to be problems. Definitely, growing pains. Definitely. But like,
yeah, but that's kind of the thing. It is
our systems work. You know, we got to. This is summon our engineers instead of making warmongers. We need to summon our engineers and say, "Damn it, we've got this problem. You know, this is now a matter of national security. The U.S. dollar might collapse our currency."
Yeah, but that's kind of a bad situation to be in because like it is like putting out the fire after the fire happened and not like preventing it. Because what I'm trying to say, kind of the Bitcoin community needs to be, if like it wants to be, it needs to be more kind of long-term thinking than the opposition and kind of faster at the same time.
And they spend most of
kind of that's it.
Problems like this.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that in order for Bitcoin to win, like first we need to make sure that it is ready to win, right? We need to plan for victory. So that, for example, Bitcoin has the capacity to actually encompass the whole financial system of the world in case like the financial system like implodes, or if it is just like shaken up, something like that. So for example, so like kind of a shadow financial system that is just like ready to take over like that, right? And not just this thing that can do like 5 transactions a second, and kind of it has a kind of working Lightning network that it isn't clear how do you scale it, and you need a huge like engineering effort to make it work on a short notice when everything is going to hell because like the financial system imploded. But I don't think the financial system will implode anytime soon, probably, but that's just a scenario for like things kind of going super well for Bitcoin and Bitcoin not being ready for it, because like people are not planning for victory, sort of, right? And not building stuff up to that.
I don't think it'll implode to a certain degree because human beings are very good at creating abstract hierarchies, you know, laws and whatnot. We're very good at it. So I mean, and we already have a history of collapsing our money many times in a row, right? So and
yeah, also the thing is collapsing money, you kind of want Bitcoin to replace the money that collapses and not some other fiat currency, for example, right?
Yeah. But this is where I'm saying is like now this money's backed by joules per second, right? It's going to cut through. I hope it's going to cut. If the Mongolian horde can start to become a little bit more focused, then they can get it to cut through the next CBDC bullshit that these politicians are going to create. Anyway.
Maybe. That's the Bitcoin like investment thesis, right? That eventually it would like people would get their like stuff together, and eventually it would actually kind of win and become the like reserve currency and so forth. And there's like huge gains, or it would not. Actually, thing is with I think the current Bitcoin price, it is on one hand kind of cool that it has like a price that is like so high, but on the other hand, compared to the scale of Bitcoin becoming the reserve currency and how much like Bitcoin would cost then, is like a tiny fraction of that. So on one hand, it is kind of super optimistic because there's so much room to grow. On the other hand, it is kind of scary because like the market thinks that the probability of that happening is so tiny that the price is so tiny compared to the actual like huge gains of Bitcoin becomes the reserve currency. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is exciting times, man. And I think with the latest sort of understanding that I've got, I think one of the primary drivers, and this is the third time I'm mentioning it, is that drive chains, if the essence of this argument of the power projection through kinetic versus electric becomes clear, the rewards that side chains can offer miners becomes almost like a national security argument. Do you see what I mean? It's no longer about banking and finances. It can become about national security type thing. It's a new form of war. So anyway,
I mean, the finance kind of already is part of national security because you need money to wage war, right?
Well, sure, yes, but if you've got third generation bankers who have been used to the luxuries of running the US dollar, and they become fat and complacent, then what happens is they start printing when they wish, and you have paired a kinetic power projection with an abstract hierarchical money, fiat money. So the kinetic power will always be there. So it makes sense that if there's somebody who's going to do this, it'll be the US military who will push to say, no, we're tired of you bloody bankers, fucking up our system, because now we can't exist. You're not funding us enough, etc., etc., etc. We prefer that Congress or whatever you people do to start to adopt Bitcoin as the reserve currency, because then you not only have the largest kinetic power projection in the world, but you've now moved into a system whereby you also have the largest electric power projection. So really, in that situation, the USA becomes, if it can get its shit together, it becomes the most ideal place to secure your Bitcoin, because then you've got the digital security as well as the kinetic security. So like the states have got it pretty well. It's really neat, and I'm really thankful that China, because Bitcoin is not really compatible with authoritarian systems, right? They're going to, the authoritarian systems want to print their money to extract value from the people. So they're going to kick out the miners, and that was a great test for Bitcoin, because now all the miners have been chucked out of China, and now USA is the majority hasher in the world. In private individuals are in the United States are the primary hashers. So this bodes well for Bitcoin. I think it bodes really well for Bitcoin. Anyway, what other subjects can we? I think we've hashed this particular subject.
Okay, I decided to end the Indaba at this point. It became insanely difficult to edit, to ramp up my volume. When I say something, then we're sort of chit-chatting, toing and froing about functional programming. and it just was just too much. So leave it at that. Thank you very much. I think in future I'm going to make a more concerted attempt in ensuring that the guest can hear me clearly, and if there are driver problems with my microphone, then just fall back onto the camera microphone. We'll figure it out. Anyway, the next Indaba, the audio is a lot better. Thanks everybody. Sorry about the audio on this one.